Welcome back, everybody, to the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel. A little Monday morning War Eagle Wake Up. Here, Christian Clemente, joined by Jason Caldwell. Jason, we've been on the road quite a bit, and we're getting ready to go on the road again. We're recording this on Sunday night. By the time you guys are watching this on Monday, we're probably going to be back on the road. So we've been hitting the recruiting trail a little bit, kind of like the Auburn coaches. Hasn't been a ton of on-campus visitors. Portal stuff is mostly wrapped up. And high school stuff is getting ready to gear up again. But right now it's spring practices for high schools. So the coaches are on the road and we're on the road as well. Before we get into what we're going to talk about today, make sure if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel already, you do that down below. That subscription does not cost you anything. We're less than 100 subscribers away from 10,000 on YouTube. So it'd be greatly appreciated if you did subscribe. Jason, we've already hit 5 schools so far. This spring we hit Enterprise first. We've already talked about that previously, so we're not going to talk about that. But in the last week or so, we've hit 4 more. We hit Auburn High, Omar Mabson. We hit Opelika, Malik Autry. There's more too. These are just going to be the guys that we're talking about on the show today. Thompson with Anquan Fagans and Jared Smith, and then a trio of guys at Parker led by Jordan Crawford, the defensive line commit, Timothy Merritt, the DB, and Naeem offered the 5-star Ohio State commitment. Jason, let's start real quick. Let's go in order of where we went in terms of schools. Omar Mabson, a running back that we went to go see at Auburn High. We went to go and see him, and he had a good collection of kind of mid-major offers. We said, look, more are coming. A couple of days later, Mizzou offers, then Auburn offers the next day, and then Georgia offers the day after that. So it was a good run there for Omar.
Yeah, that's kind of what we said. We told him, I think we're out there that day and said, look, they're coming. And then you got a couple of clips of him. First one running down the sidelines and around everyone, and then a second clip where he just flattens the guy on the sidelines. And I think that probably pushed things over the edge. And you see a photo of him, and we said it, when you see guys in person, sometimes it's different. That's when the spring evaluation period is so important for guys. And for a guy like that, this is a sophomore that Omar Mabson. I mean, like he was a big kid last year, but he didn't look like that. You look at him now, and that looks like a college junior. And kind of the description we've had was he feels like a faster Damari Alston. When you look at him, 5'9.5", 5'10", but he's 205. He can fly. Keith Etheridge, Auburn High coach, told us, look, we laser timed him at better than 4.4 twice. Even if it's a little off in your mid 4.4s. That's really darn fast for a kid that's going to be a junior in high school. So, yeah, I was really impressed by him. Really looking forward to watching him play this year. And a really tough region when you look at, like I said, we went to Enterprise already, Auburn, got Opelika that we'll talk about next. And then, Central Phoenix City. It's a brood of a region that somebody's, not going to make it out of.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Did not have to go too far from home to go and see Malik Autry a couple days after that. Obviously, another name there is Amari Smiley. He's not going to probably be an Auburn guy, but that's a guy that, a Tulane, a South Alabama, a school like that is going to get a really good defensive end there. So when you have a guy like Malik Autry and Amari Smiley holding down the defensive line, you've got a pretty good front in high school football. And Jason, we were not the only ones there. It's kind of the theme of Malik Autry's recruitment right now. Florida was there. Ole Miss was there. We talked with him. He was fresh off an Ohio State visit. He said that Ohio State is a school that's really come on strong lately. This June, he's going to hit Florida, USC, UCF, and Ohio State for official visits. He said Florida and Ohio State are kind of the main schools in the picture right now. The quote that really stuck out to me when talking with him was, I asked him, are you still recruiting other guys? Are you kind of leading the way there? He said, yeah, I'm doing that a little bit, but I kind of cooled down on that, at least just for now, to kind of focus on my own process a little bit, get through June, try and kind of, make sure that Auburn's the right spot for me, or, decide on another school or whatever, make a final decision. But then he even said, even if I didn't end up at Auburn, and he said, and I'm not saying that's the case, I'd still always recruit guys to Auburn, which was a good quote in terms of how it read. And I think some people didn't like it, some people did, but Auburn's definitely fighting to hold on here.
Yeah. I want to kind of generally, you mentioned Florida being there. We hung out and talked to Austin Armstrong for a while. That's a guy that familiar with, that we have some ties a little bit, so we're able to talk to him a little bit. But just to give people an idea of the talent in the state of Alabama, we've been to Enterprise, Auburn, Opelika, Thompson, Parker, right? And that's the 5 we've been to so far.
Yes.
We have seen Georgia, Clemson, Michigan, Florida, Ole Miss, Louisville.
We saw multiple different Florida coaches on multiple
Yes,
days.
and we've seen Auburn,
Georgia Tech,
Tulane. You mentioned it. That's just in the schools and the brief visits we've made at schools. That's how much talent's in the state of Alabama, and it lets you know why. Like, hey, we're going on the road too, because it's important to see these guys, because as we transition to Thompson a little bit, some of these other schools, especially at Thompson, there's a ton of young talent that are going to be the next guys up. But obviously you start with a couple of the older guys, New Boy and Quan Fagans right there. Christian is a guy that I think if you ask Charles Kelly and this defensive staff, who's one of the most important guys on your board, they'd probably point to him because of his ball skills. He just reminds you of the guys that Charles Kelly's coached. Back in Florida State days, Alabama days, or whoever, because he's a playmaker. Like, he just finds the football. That's what he does. And so I think that's going to be an important one to watch, and Auburn is in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny in back-to-back classes. Cam Coleman is a guy that you say some of the best ball skills you've ever seen in terms of a wide receiver at his level, at the high school level. You can kind of say the same thing for Anquan Fagans at the safety position as well. He just has a knack for finding the football. I tweeted it. The term ball hawk gets thrown around a lot now, so it's not necessarily truly indicative of a player. That's what I would instantly describe Anquan Fagans as. 18 combined interceptions over the past 3 years at Thompson. So playing at the 7A level in Alabama. They also play really tough out-of-state teams as well. I know they play Grayson this fall, which is a team that we're going to go and see on Tuesday this week. We're going to hit North Georgia there, and we'll talk about that, or North Atlanta there. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. But then, Jason, one of the other older guys there on that Thompson team doesn't feel older. It kind of still, technically they're still juniors right now, or maybe they're just out of school, so they'd be going into their senior year. But I don't know. To me, he does not feel older. But that's the way it is now. Jared Smith, the 2025 edge rusher. If there were 32 5-stars right now, he would be one. I believe he's like the number 18 player in the country with 24/7 Sports. We've just only handed out half of the 5-stars so far. Elite frame, listed as an edge. I think eventually he grows into a 5-tech. But there's some work to be done here. And that was kind of what the theme of my story was after talking with him.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about watching him practice was that they've got him as a stand-up outside linebacker. I don't think that's where he'll be down the road. And obviously my photo right there, that's DJ Durkin kind of staring him down. We were at Thompson the other day. I think that's the intriguing thing about him. We've seen him play basketball. Been watching this kid for 2 years since he was at Spain Park, transferred to Thompson during the year last year. So he didn't play only a handful of games last season. When he transferred to Thompson, he did not play the rest of the year. So now this is really his first opportunity to play at Thompson. He practiced and did some stuff. They got him kind of as a stand-up outside linebacker, and obviously he'll get down and do some things, but they're moving around. He's athletic. He was an athletic basketball player. I think he's one of those guys that you watch this season, and his numbers might not be off the charts. Like, I think Zion Grady will probably be a guy that will have more sacks or things like that than maybe he does. But I think there's so much upside because of the athleticism, and he's a guy that, you're right, he still feels really young, even though he's going to be a senior. It just feels like there's just so much left for him, and I think that's the intriguing thing that he brings to the table.
Yeah, getting a chance to talk with him. And keep in mind, guys, if you're not over at auburnundercover.com, this is stuff that we've all written about extensively, had insider notes and pieces and everything already up on that days ago. So definitely make sure you're over at auburnundercover.com and subscribed if you're not already. But in terms of Jared Smith, South Carolina and Georgia, kind of the two schools ahead of the pack a little bit. He's also going to go and see Tennessee, Florida State, and USC in June for official visits. Planning to get back to Auburn for Big Cat Weekend and in the fall for an official visit. Look, I'm always going to shoot you straight. I think Auburn is behind just about all of those schools, or most of them, maybe ahead of a couple of them, but definitely I would say behind South Carolina and Georgia. Work to be done there. It's kind of always felt that way with Jared Smith's recruitment. For whatever reason, Auburn's never really quite gotten a grasp there. But maybe if you get a guy like an Anquan Fagans, who is a guy that we're tracking, we continue to track closely. Jason, you talked with him, and he said, "Look, I could just wake up one day and want to commit," and that's not out of the question at all. He's not just saying that.
Yeah.
We think that Auburn sits in a really good spot there. So if you did get an Anquan Fagans, maybe that would help boost you up a little bit with Jared Smith. Look, he's been to Auburn a good bit, and he'll keep visiting Auburn. It's just about trying to make up some ground there, however that's possible.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right about Anquan Fagans. I mean, I think there's things. There's Charles Kelly's connection to the family. There's recruited both his older brothers, known the family for a long time, and then you mentioned Sylvester. Caleb Harris. Caleb Harris already on campus that played at Thompson last year, was a safety running mate of Anquan Fagans, and then Anquan Fagans originally from the Anniston, Oxford area, where Sylvester Smith's from, where Antonio Kite's from, where Braden Joyner's from. I mean, there's a big time connection to several guys on this roster for Anquan Fagans in addition to Caleb Harris. So that could be something that plays a factor in his recruiting as well.
Yeah. Shortly after we hit Thompson, I don't even remember what day we were there. Wednesday? I think it was Wednesday when we were there. We drove over and caught Parker. Got to watch them pretty much the full practice at Parker, which was enjoyable to watch. This guy, Big Jordan Crawford, we've always kind of labeled him as a nose tackle, and that's definitely what he is. But he's a little bit more versatile than that. And that's something when we got Cooper Patagna on the Auburn Undercover podcast earlier this year, he even noted that. He said, look, he's a nose tackle, but he's got enough athleticism and moves despite his size to move around just a little bit on the defensive line. And we got to see that during some one-on-ones and stuff like that. Really impressive player, very polished as a player right now, a guy that you think could come in and probably compete for playing time right away at Auburn along the defensive line.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys too that I think he gets to Auburn and he weighs 305 instead of probably around 320. I would guess that's probably where he is somewhere right now. You get him at 305, 310, and the explosiveness is there. He's already there, but you add more of that to the table, and I think all of a sudden, I mean, hey, there's a lot of comparisons that could be made. I mean, I'd never make this one, but I think there's a similar trait into a guy like Warren Sapp because of the quickness off the ball. And Warren Sapp was a freak because he was such an athletic guy to be that big. I don't know if Jordan Crawford has the bend that Warren Sapp had, but he's got some of the traits where you talk about maybe Booger McFarland kind of guys where they're so explosive that they don't have to be 6'5". Matter of fact, I kind of like these guys on that interior defensive line because those are the guys that get underneath. They're able to get underneath the guy's pads and do some things. That's what he does. Now he's powerful. He's a brute. And I think as he continues to develop and use his hands, I think he's a guy that's going to absolutely play early.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking Auburn commitments right now, and if we're ranking them, he would be up there competing for that number one spot in terms of immediate impact ability. He might be the number one spot for me. In terms of future potential, I mean, we'll have a much better idea after we get on the road this week and see some more guys. I love Tavares Dice, love Jacaleb Falk. Malik Autry has a ton of traits as well, but I just think Jordan Crawford is a guy who can step in and play right away for Auburn. Moving back to the secondary there at Parker, look, they've got a lot of guys at Parker in various classes. They've got a 2026 wide receiver. It'll be worth noting that we talked about on auburnundercover.com. They've got Tim Merritt, who I've got pulled up right now. They have another big safety named Joseph Holt, who's got some mid-major offers as well.
Another big defensive end.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of dudes. Caleb Smith is the D end. Yes. Show him some love. He'll end up somewhere like a Georgia Tech or a Tulane or something like that. So they lost Jeremiah Beeman, who went to Alabama last year. They've still got a ton of dudes that'll be a really fierce defense.
You won't find a high school defense, maybe outside of IMG Academy, that looks better just physically than the Parker defense that's going to roll out this year. Their secondary is 6'2", 6'2", 6'1", 6'1", all long, 185 pounds or so. Got a couple of good linebacker kids, including a kid that moved in from Michigan. Is that where he's from?
I believe so, yes.
Michigan or Wisconsin, somewhere up that way. And then those two defensive linemen. They got some guys, and you mentioned Merritt. Merritt is long, athletic corner. Reminds me of a little bit bigger version of kind of guy like Walt McFadden. He can run, a guy that's continuing to develop in ball skills. But I mean, everybody's going to talk Naeem Alford, and rightfully so, because Naeem Alford is a physical freak. He's a bigger version of AJ Harris, in my opinion. We saw AJ Harris, come back in the portal last year, so athletic. Naeem Alford's a bigger version of the same guy, in my opinion. But man, Merritt can play, and he's a guy that I think, as people see in the spring and even into the season, he could just see his stuff take off because he's a long corner and gives you, the kind of tools that coaches are looking for.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Neem offered the one that everyone, of course, wants to know about, the 5-star in-state that Ohio State swooped in and landed back in February, I believe. We got a chance to talk with him. First off, really great kid. All of these guys are really great to talk with, and we really appreciate their time. But Neem is great, and he shoots you straight. And the reality of that, and I wrote about it, is that Auburn has work to do, and every other school, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Oregon, Auburn, those were the ones that he named. All of them have a lot of work to do. I do truly get the sense that he's pretty locked in with Ohio State right now. Look, it's May. Signing classes are not signed in May. They'll be signed in December, so there's a long way to go. He said that he'd visit Auburn again, probably get an official visit as well. He's known Charles Kelly since Charles Kelly was at Alabama. Crime Dog has been recruiting him for several years as well, so he's familiar with Auburn, familiar with Hugh Freeze, but everybody has work to do here.
Yeah, I agree. I think this one is an uphill battle, but you'd rather be an uphill battle being the in-state school versus being the uphill battle where you're trying to get him to go out of state. So I think if you're Auburn, you take your chances going, hey, we're going to keep working. I think for Auburn, a lot of it could depend on what the season looks like. If you go out and you have a big start and you're 4-0 and playing Oklahoma and come in and have a monster day there and have this huge, those are things that could impact a guy like Neem Alford. He's been to Auburn before, but if you start showing it, hey, okay, now I'm seeing it on the field. I felt it. I felt like it's going in the right direction, but you start seeing it show up and those are things that can have an impact. So I think that's where next step recruiting for Auburn is going to be, okay, start to back up some of those things. I think guys have bought into it knowing that it's coming, but the sooner it comes, maybe the more it helps for a guy like this.
Yeah, if you're Auburn, the advantage you do have is the pedigree at cornerback that you've had over the last 10 years or so now of putting guys in the league. So you do have that, but it's time to put up or shut up a little bit in terms of putting product on the field and winning some football games and trying to contend, maybe not this year, but ultimately showing a progress towards contending for the SEC and the college football playoff. And I agree with you completely. In terms of hitting the road this week, Jason, we're going to be on the road Monday. The plan is to go up to Milton, home of Ryan G., Auburn's tight end commit, also home of CJ Wiley, arguably Auburn's top wide receiver commit. He's right up, not commit, target. CJ Wiley is an Auburn wide receiver target, not a commit. I can promise you that. But we're going to go and see CJ Wiley and Ryan G. I believe Milton also has Ethan Barbour now as well, the Georgia tight end commit that Auburn has flirted with over the past year or so. So maybe get a chance to talk with him. We might get over to Fellowship Christian School where 5-star offensive tackle Josh Petty is at. That's the goal for Monday. And then Tuesday is going to be a jam-packed day. We're going to get up to Buford, home of Auburn cornerback commit Devin Williams, Georgia linebacker commit Jaden Perlotti, Bryce Perry Wright, Nasir McCoy, AJ Holloway. Look, I could list off like 15 guys alone at Buford. Go down to Grayson, home of Tyler Atkinson, home of Anthony Davis, 2 2026 linebackers that are very talented. The house that Kenyatta Watson built there at Grayson. So we'll go check them out. And then on the way back down to Auburn, we're going to hit Langston Hughes, see Tavares Dice, see Dontrell Glover. Xavier Tiller is a top 30, top 40 overall player at tight end in the 2026 class. There's a running back that they just offered in the 2026 class as well. So stay tuned to Auburn Undercover for that. We're going to have a ton of individual stories, intel pieces, notes, get some practice highlights from Milton, depending on how the rain works out on Monday, and Langston Hughes as well. Jason, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit as we close out the War Eagle Wake Up here. Who's 2 guys that you're looking forward to seeing the most over these next 5 schools that we're going to see in 2 days, 4 or 5 schools?
Yeah, you mentioned CJ Wiley. I just watching his video and seeing him, and then watching him run track and seeing the things he's done, I see a guy that is going to blow up. I really think he's going to be a guy that's going to be pushing 5-star guy. We saw a few of those guys last year in the wide receiver group, and that's a position where you can really do those things. You come out of this monster senior year. I think he's going to be one of those guys. And then I think just Tavares Dice, because I'm so intrigued by his athleticism, but I want to see like where can he line up. We know I don't think I have any question. I think he could play any of the 3 interior spots. I think he can play center if he needed to. I mean, he's that athletic. Can he be a left tackle? I don't know. So does he have the length to do it? It doesn't really matter. We saw Dylan Wade last year. I think he's a really good football player. Just anxious to kind of see how he fits and kind of what it looks like actually on the field. So a couple of guys there. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so make sure you stay tuned for that at auburnundercover.com. We'll be back here on the YouTube channel probably towards middle or end of the week once we get back off the road. Nathan will be back from vacation as well. We'll do a podcast of some sort, go more in depth. I know this was just a quick 20 minutes. We wanted to get something up for Monday morning before we're back out on the road. So we'll try and go a little bit more in depth next time. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you're still here and you're not subscribed to the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel, make sure to do that down below. That does not cost you anything, and we are pushing and getting very close to 10,000 subscribers on there, so that would be greatly appreciated. And then, like I said, make sure you're over at auburnundercover.com. We'll have everything rolling. We'll have notes and stuff going up on Monday. So stay tuned for that, and appreciate everyone.